Just reach into your heart and Allah is always there. You are never alone. You are never alone. Through sorrow and through grief, through happiness and peace, you are never alone.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you? And let's have a nice new episode of Family Issues. As we usually say, this program is interested in focusing on every family issue, every family subject that irritates or affects the emotions or the thinking or the way we raise our children. This program is supposed to help the parents, to help family designers, to help those who want to build a good family, to put a block, to put a brick in a big wall or a big building, which is called the community. So we can say that we are increasing the efficiency of and the efficacy of the family in the community by all new ideas, by all topics, by your questions, by your suggestions. So please never hesitate to give us your suggestions, even if it was something that's negative or positive. This is very important to us, and we are so much interested in this. As we have said that our goals is to increase the degree of efficiency of a member in the family. And one of the aspects of the efficacy or efficiency of a member in his family is the way he communicates with others. Let me first tell you that there is something called the self and something called the other. I myself have a self, this is me, and there are so many other people around me, my family members, my colleagues, my teachers, my colleagues, and so on. So there have to be some sort of a balance between the self and the others. And by this way, good communication and good dissemination of infos between people goes on, and the net result is a good net and a good link between everyone and his brother in the community. And by this way, as I said, the community raises up and up. But unfortunately, sometimes there's some sort of problems that affect this efficiency of communication. By other words, the balance between the self and the other is distorted. There's some sort of imbalance. So if, for example, one have focused more on the others, he's going to, of course this is, in a way, it's a good thing to help others, to be communicating and linking with other people all the time, caring about them, donating for them by help, by any means. This is very good. And this reminds me with Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, when he donated by all his money to other people because he loves people and he cares about them and he wants to increase the efficiency of the community. But sometimes if you lost this balance and you focus on the others, but not in the way we are saying, I mean, not for donation, just for speaking and talking and wasting the time, so you are going to lose time, money and effort, and this is of course not efficiency. This is some sort of a chaos, this is a miss. But on the opposite side, there is some other type of losing balance, that is to concentrate or to focus on the self and not on the others. If you focus on the self, this means that you're not going to communicate with others. And by the way, the cable that links a person with others is maybe formed of 3 types of wires. The first, this cable is full of wires, but mainly 3 groups of wires. One of them is to link by speech, by words, by language. And the other group of wires is by the eye-to-eye contact. You look at them, they see you. And this eye language between you and the others transfers so many things, emotions, meanings, and so many messages. The third type of communication wire group is by touch, by the body language through touch. So we touch, we speak and we look at others to communicate with them. Did you get what is the title of this episode is about? Well, this is what we are going to say, but after the break.
You are never alone. You are never alone.
Be proactive.
How to be proactive in Islam, how to serve our religion, how to serve our life.
No, we want them to be proactive in matters that are related to their ummah, the true leader. And this is maybe we need to have this, okay, among us as Muslims. The true leader is the one who creates leaders.
So the society at the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave the chance for the children to blossom.
Now who took the reward of this? The initiative of Ali bin Abi Talib. Ali bin Abi Talib took the reward because of his initiative.
How long have you been passive? How much time have you lost in your life because of negativity? Learn how to take conscious control over your life. Set your goals and work to achieve them in an Islamic way.
If you really love your wife, your children, your parents, your people, then you have to do your utmost. You have to do whatever you can in order to invite them to Islam. We are in need for this reminder. The main point is ikhlas, is sincerity, is what I want to get in the hereafter.
Join Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad and his host, Muhammad Abdurrahim, in this inspiring show.
You are never alone. You are never alone.
Welcome back. Hello again. We're speaking about autism. Autism is a group of odd behaviors that results from so many factors. So many theories are speaking about or are accused of the causation of autism. As I've said in the previous session or the previous segment, that there is some sort of imbalance between the self and the other. Autistic children or an autistic person is mainly focused and concentrates on himself. And by this way, he is not linked or he is not communicating with others at all. And even if he communicated with them, this is not in a very efficient way. So the quality of communication is very bad. I'm not going to say numbers, but actually it's not uncommon between the children in the community all over. And the age actually is affected by this is usually less than 3 hours. Please let them close the earpiece because I am distracted. We have celebrities who had autism in the world. The most, or the icon of autism, the most famous person in the world was Dr. Temple Grandin. She's now a professor of medicine in one of the faculties of veterinary medicine in North Carolina State. And she was having severe autism. But nowadays, she's a professor. She has her own writings and editorials and books. You can read her memories in the net. And she is very efficient nowadays in her work. Also, Bill Gates is well known to be having autistic features, at least when he was young. But he was focused on working in electronics and in very accurate skills of, electronics and computer works and so on when he was young. Until he was very focused, and his father focused on this himself until Bill Gates became what he is now. He's one of the most wealthy people. The same thing applies to Einstein and to so many of also Picasso. So many of the celebrities and famous people were well-known examples of autism. So it's not that bad thing if you could use it in the right way. Yesterday I met one of the autistic young people. He's a very good young man. He has a very golden memory. He remembers everything from the year 2007 until now. about a certain topic in his life. In the clinic, he used to tell me his memories very accurately by the day, by the date, by the name, by everything. He's very accurate. So this is very good. You can use it. Well, before I continue speaking about autism and this very interesting part of personality, let us first go and see this report, and we'll comment about it and complete our conversation. So let's see it.
Never alone. You are never alone.
What do you know about autism?
I know it is something which makes people not capable of being 100% natural, but there is a lot of possibilities to help these people and to be more normal, and a lot of books have been written about this.
I don't know about it. Well, I believe autism is more like when you grow up and you feel kind of like you don't have a lot of friends, you are very much alone, and that's what I understand about autism. I guess a lot of factors may be that your social life when you grow up, maybe you lost your parents or you don't have a healthy childhood. That's why very much might suffer autism.
That is something you get when you get. It's something you're born with. It's not something a disease or anything you get. It's just something you are born with, and then you have to be treated different. That's the only thing I need. I know. Sorry.
What is the family rule in this regard?
I think very much is the rule of the family is to encourage the children or the child to interact with another children, with another family members. Nowadays, a lot of children just like they are focusing in like kind of video games, a lot of plays, a lot of games, which is very solitary, not interacting with other children very much.
Then they have to take extra care and secure that the baby, the child, gets the right kind of treatment, so they get the right support to get a good life, I would say.
You are never alone. You are never alone.
We are back again. We're speaking about autism and autistic features in children and teenagers and other persons. It's a very important issue. Let me first give you the telephone numbers if you want to join us. Our two telephones are 002 02 38 555 249. No, I'm sorry, that's the only telephone we have right now. Actually, about what's meant by autism, as I've said, it's to be with yourself all the time, to be focused on yourself. You are interested in yourself. You're interested in your hobbies, in your ways of playing, even if it was silly types or ridiculous types of games. You are not interested in communicating with people up to the degree that you are not interested in learning language. You might lose all your words, even if you started with some words. In the beginning, you were saying, for example, the child was saying, father, mother, papa, mama, my brother, water. He says, woe, for example, the starting prefixes of the words. But suddenly, the parents discover that the child is losing his wealth of words. After a while, after he started to make a sentence, for example, formed of 2 or 3 words, the 3 words became 2 words, and the 2 words became 1 word. From saying, he reached a stage of development when he says, I want to eat so, then he says, I eat, then he says eat, then he says food, then he says fu, da, and then he stops speaking. He shifts or he transfers from being a verbal person to a non-verbal person. Sometimes this is one of the scenarios. So by this way he loses communication. Other scenarios he loses eye contact with other people or looks through them. Either he looks away from them or he looks through them as if they were transparent, He's not looking at the face, not eye to eye, but looking through you as if you were a transparent person. Another name was addressed to this. It's not called actually autism right now. This is the colloquial word. It's the scientific word as the American Psychiatric Association or the American Association of Child Behaviors called it pervasive developmental disorders. And it was classified into so many types. The most important of them is the autistic disorder. It's like, spectrum of degrees. One of them is Asperger's syndrome, something called Asperger's syndrome, and Rett syndrome that affects females. And so this is according to an international classification in psychiatry called DSM-5. This is the recent classification. We're going to have a break and then come back and continue what we are speaking about, autism.
You are never alone. You are never alone.
Dear viewers, Hoda programs can be watched in the English section of the in-flight entertainment directory on board all Saudi airline flights, domestic and international. Sit back, relax and enjoy watching Hoda's entertaining and enlightening shows on your trip. Hoda wishes you a safe and successful journey. Hoda, a light in every home.
You are never alone. You are never alone.
We are back again speaking about autism. Actually, the problem is that in the sensory system, mainly the brain, if you look at this figure, for example, sometimes the problem is that the blood is not reaching well to some of the areas, or at least when you were a baby, it wasn't that good. So this causes what's called hypoxia. This is diminution or a decrease in the amount of oxygen that is reaching the cells, which affected the quality of efficiency or working of the cells. Okay? This may affect any of the areas. It might affect, for example, speech areas like Broca's areas, which is interested in making the person speaks fluently and speaks well. So this is a problem because, the net result is that the child is not going to practice well in school. He's not going to mix with friends. Mixing with other children is not good. He's not fearing of dangers because he doesn't assess well the dangers around him. Okay, his reactions are odd. He's playing with some silly toys, for example, a cover of a pen. That's what interests him, and he might spend hours and hours playing with this cover, leaving the very interesting toys or paintings and playing with this cover of a pen. This is called sensory play. He plays by his senses, and the problem is in the sensory system. It's not in the motor system. So actually this affects his behavior. And there's also what's called, one of the features is called affection of the linguistic abilities. For example, what's called echolalia. Echolalia is repeating the words. I say, for example, for the child, what's your name? He says, what's your name? I say, no, please, answer me. What's your name? He says, please, answer me. What's your name? He's going to repeat all the time what I'm saying. This is a problem. He's not going to understand, and this is very silly between children. And by describing children, the way these children, the autistic ones, play is very odd. I know that sometimes games are in groups. You play with a group of children, for example, hide and seek. No, even if he was in between children, he plays alone. Okay? He plays parallel to the children. He's not playing with them. He's playing with himself between them. Or otherwise he plays alone. There's also what's called echopraxia. Echo means, the repetition of the sound wave. So echolalia means repetition of the words. Echopraxia means repetition of movements. The child chooses one of the movements and repeats it all the time. For example, he's moving his hand in this way. The child, for example, wants to comb his hair. He repeats it in a very silly and uninteresting way, all the time doing this, doing like this, doing like this. This is called echopraxia. So all these signs and silly giggling and laughing without a cause, all these things are causing at the end a very odd behavior by the child. So there is a problem. and we have rapidly to rush to help this child, because otherwise he's not going to fulfill all the goals we want from him. So at home, when you ask me what are the causes of this, I say, for example, there are some genetic factors and some environmental factors. The genetic factors, at the beginning, it starts to affect the child. But nowadays, I think every part of autism can be cured. But if you started early enough, this helps very well. One of the risk factors that affects the life of an autistic child is pollution. If you change the environment and leave this, for example, area full of lead, full of arsenic, the child's health is going to improve. If you, some accusations has been directed towards one type of vaccination, which is called the MMR, mumps, measles, rubella. This is one of the vaccines which are obligatory for the children when they are young, for example, about 9 months or so, or 1 year. They give him this vaccine, which is accused of causing, maybe because of the preservative material in the vaccine itself, it helps to cause autism. Also, some accusations has been directed towards some types of foods, like milk, casein protein in milk, and gluten protein in whey, and some other proteins were accused of causing or helping the autistic behaviors to grow on. So, by this means, we have to focus on so many things to help this child. Number one is the environment. I ask the mothers to be what's called a speaking mother. All the time, the mother has to speak all the time, loudly. Say, for example, this is a moon, it's rounded, it's a lighting, this is a ground, it's and this is the sun, and this is a boy, and this is a girl, all the time, using or having flashcards with you, and saying, for example, this is a tree, this is a boy, this is a refrigerator, all the time repeating this. This might help the child to remember the words, because he is not having the ability, except if he is having a visual picture of what he is looking at. Sessions of speech therapy or behavioral modification, because of these silly behaviors we've been describing, you have to, for example, recruit a professional therapist for this, and nowadays they are very common, and not less than 3 sessions per week of speech therapy and skill practicing and behavioral modification helps the child to get out of these silly behaviors and this delay in development of cognitive abilities. Inclusion between normal children is very important. Even if your child was resisting mixing with other children, you have to push him. All these children are interested in objects, in computers, in TVs, in mobile phones, but they are not interested in mixing with people. You know, it's like 2 people grabbing a big rope. Okay, so we are taking the child. We want him to be linked with subjects, and he is pushing us to link him with objects. He wants to play with objects, we want him to play with subjects. So he is refusing. You have to be organized, you have to make a program. These children are all the time routine children. They want to be having the same program every day. They like sameness. Okay? So you have to try to change this, not to be all the time routine, but loosely. You have to change this routine in a very flexible way. Role playing is very important. For example, me and my son, he's going to play as the role of a delivery man. He's going to stand beside the door, and he's going to sell me, for example, the pizza, and I'm waiting. You are the pizza man. How are you? You take the money, I take the pizza. This role playing stimulates and makes the child, the autistic child, able to imagine the other. We have said in the very beginning of this episode, the problem is in the ability to imagine the other. He is all the time drowning in his self. Medical therapies are not interested except in 2 or 3 things. Number one, if this autistic child was the hyperactive one, and this is not usual, sometimes this autistic child is hyperactive, so some drugs helps him to listen his hyperactivity and to increase his focusing and his concentration and attention. If you are not in need of this, so you are not in need of having these types of drugs. The second thing is drugs that are like brain foods. For example, some drugs are made of natural herbs from underneath the oceans and the seas. Some of the natural materials from honey, from fruits, from vegetables, omega-3 and omega-6 and such things, such compounds are very helpful to these people. Also, by the way, we've described the story of casein protein and gluten protein, which is not very commonly affecting, or we cannot consider it as a main cause of autism. But when we discover that the child is sensitive towards these things, we actually prevent them, and this is what we call a diet, an autistic child diet. It's gluten-free and casein-free. Also, other non-traditional types of therapy is art therapy, play therapy, story therapy, acupuncture. All these are helping well. But one of the most interesting therapies, let me tell you, I'm using it myself with my children in the clinic, is what's called hyperbaric oxygen. Hyperbaric oxygen. Hyperbaric oxygen is simply, in short words, it's a room with oxygen, full of oxygen, through a pump, and this oxygen concentration is 100%, and it's under pressure. This oxygen enters the cells by breathing and inhalation, enters the cells of the brain, okay? And there is the good news is that the brain cells, previously we thought that these brain cells are damaged, permanently damaged. But actually this is not, or this was not the story. Now the new discovery says that usually the cells are having transient stoppage of function. It's like something like when the brain, when the computer freezes, or when it's hanged on a picture and you are trying to move the mouse and it's not working. So what is the way to restart the function of the computer, or to restart the function of the cells? This is by hyperbaric oxygen. Slowly, after sessions and sessions, about not less than 10 sessions, and up to 400 sessions, if the child enters this capsule or this room, okay, and he breathes and breathes, this oxygen enters his cells and changes these mildly affected cells into the normal functioning way, wherever the area is, the motor area, the sensory area, the speech area, whatever the area is, gradually this area becomes functioning and it becomes working well again. They are speaking about what's called music therapy or art therapy. Well, this depends on the type of the child's problems and where is he focused, and the type or style of life he is working. And by the way, the style of life is very important at home, because if the mother, as I've said, is all the time with the child speaking, and there are other children and sibs, everyone is negotiating and talking and speaking, this helps the child to grow up well, and even if there was some sort of language defect, it is corrected gradually. But unfortunately, sometimes when the autistic child is not surrounded by people, just his mother or his grandmother, she's not speaking, she is all the time occupied. So from where he's going to get words? He's going to get words from nothing, from the TV. And he's going to be like Robert, like the TV. He speaks in a monotonous way, okay? So this is not healthy, of course. But I don't want mothers to get the feeling of guilt, as I usually hear people saying, well, it's my fault, I put my child on the TV all the time. This is the cause of autism. This is not the cause of autism. It's a risk factor that helps. But anyway, it was his destiny to have this, maybe genetically, maybe in a configurational way during the neonatal stage when his mother was pregnant or so, or as I said, the story of hypoxia, the deficiency of oxygen to reach the brain. All these are factors that help this problem to be happening. One of the most important things is what's called newly alexithymia. Alexithymia is difficulty in identifying or understanding the feelings or identifying the emotional status. I cannot understand that the one in front of me is happy. I cannot understand that the one in front of me is afraid of something. I know the data, theoretically, but I cannot understand this, I cannot feel it. Okay? So you find my reaction monotonous. My reaction is like a machine or like a robot, as I say. I'm not sympathizing well. Maybe there is a situation where everyone is crying, everyone is sad, but I'm smiling. Maybe I'm from inside understanding what's happening, but I cannot express it. This is one of the problems sometimes found in autism. But also the good news is that so many autistic persons, not so many, most of them are having a strength point. And this strength point usually is extraordinarily strong, maybe in the quantity or in the quality. Let me tell you something to remember this. We have said that the affection or the pathology in autism is in the central nervous system and specifically in the sensory abilities. Okay? This affection might be in the form of hyposensitivity or hypersensitivity or change, malsensation, bad sensation, misinterpretation of the sensations. What does this mean? This means that, for example, if I'm hearing something from someone and his tone is not high, the tone, I hear it in a very high way and it might affect my nerves. This is called hyperacusis. And sometimes I feel that I'm not hearing well. So it's either hyper or hypo. So we're having actually a telephone call. Noran from Egypt. Noha from Egypt. Yes, Noha, please.
Hello.
Hello, yes. How are you?
Thank you. Fine, thank you. I have a question, please.
Please go on.
At what age can we discover the autism? I mean, may my children be normal until 10 or 11 years, for example? Then I discover that one of them has autism.
Okay. Well, you are speaking about a case or you are just...
No, I'm just afraid from autism.
Okay.
And I want to know...
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noha. Well, Noha is asking, is autism, what's the age that I can discover that autism is affecting, for example, my child? As I've said in the beginning of this episode, it's not more than 3 years. Sometimes they say that there's something called late onset autism, but it's not more than 3 years. Usually we discover autism in the first 3 years of age. And the least age of discovering this is about 18 months. This is about 1.5 years. Actually, maybe in some of the developed areas they discover it more recently than this, more easier than this, and more early than this. But this is the usual in our clinics. Sometimes the infant, the boy who is breastfeeding, you find him not relating well with his mother, not making eye-to-eye contact well, all the time crying. He doesn't want to be held. He doesn't want to be touched. He wants to cry. He wants to be left without playing with him. He doesn't react well with his father. He doesn't like to be carried by his father. This is very odd, very strange. The mother herself, she wants to hug him. He's not huggable. He is not huggable. This is in contrast or different from, for example, the Down syndrome or what's called the Mongol child or trisomy 21. These children are lovably huggable. They want to be hugged. They want to play with other children. And by the way, this reminds us with one of the other features of autism, which is he doesn't want to play with children. He plays with adults. If he plays, if he communicates, if he mixes with adults more efficiently than with other children, which is very strange. Scientists all over the world, psychiatrists, behaviorists, all of them reached a way, standardized way to diagnose scientifically if your child has autism or doesn't have. There are so many ways, But one of the scales to measure how much features of autism do you have was what's called CARS test. And there's also another type called GARS. There are so many tests. For example, CARS, this is the most famous one. It stands for, it's 4 letters, and they are symbols of 4 words. Child Autistic Rating Scale. This, because every one of us have features of autism. But how much features? They are not so much. So we have to collect. We have to see how much features of autism do you have in order to classify you. Is it mild autism? Is it moderate one? Is it severe one? Is it just some features, not more than some features of autism? And after you work with a child, so many times he modifies from, for example, severe up to moderate. This is the result of therapy. We have another call from Ayman from Egypt.
Hello, good evening.
Assalamu alaikum, Ayman.
Assalamu alaikum. Please, I have a question.
Please go on.
Yes, please, there is children when they are young, small, they are late in talking and they stay quiet. They don't, they can't say what they want exactly.
Yeah.
They learn slowly.
Yeah.
And I want to know also what about autism? What's the meaning of autism?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Ayman. Thank you. Well, Ayman is maybe describing a person or a child he knows that he's not talking well, he stays silent most of the time, and he's not learning well. Well, actually these criteria that Ayman have described might be so similar for an autistic child. Because, as we have said, the autistic child most of the time either is silently or having some ununderstandable voices, or having repeated voices, repeated words which is not meaning anything. And by this way, so many times and all the time, he's not learning well. So again, when we describe the word autism, it means, Ayman, that you are working automatically. Autism, automatically. You are working with yourself. You are not moved by others. You are moved by yourself. Every one of us have 2 ways to move. Some organizer or processor from inside and another processor from outside. There is some sort of a balance. Sometimes you move towards another person or towards another work or something because you are having some motive from your inside. I want to do so. I want to eat this. I want to speak with this person. This is an internal way of regulation, and you move towards others by this way. There's another way which is external. You receive, for example, a stimulus from outside, someone saying, come, play with me, join me, talk with me, work with me, let's go a trip, let's eat together. And accordingly you mix because you are sociable. But unfortunately, children with autism or persons with autism are mainly moved by internal regulation, not by external regulation. They're not responding well to external regulation. So most of them, you find them alone, sitting alone, maybe mixing through Facebook, through the internet, through computers, through screens, playing with the mobiles. And to answer the question, I know what question you want to ask me. Does mobiles or does PlayStations and Game Boys and Xboxes and these things help autism to happen? Well, we can say it helps the behavior or the nature of the person towards the autistic pole. If we consider them as 2 poles, the autistic pole and the socialistic pole. So, of course, if you mix all the time with machines and objects and devices, you are going to be nearer to this pole, the pole of objects. And of course, you are going to lose so many of your vocabulary. And you are going to be object-minded, not subject-minded, not sociable. So we have to be careful about this. You have to balance yourself. If you are a young man or a young woman and you find yourself most of the time in your room with the net, you cannot face a person face to face. You can face him through the internet. There is a problem. This is something like what they call in psychiatry introvertedness. You are introverted, not extroverted. So, of course, you have to balance yourself. This I hopefully that this is the answer to Ayman's question about autism and autistic children. Let me also speak about the issue of talents. These children, when they are having a high degree of sensation or as I've said, hypersensitivity, it might reach the degree of having a talent or to be gifted. For example, calculation of numbers, big numbers, thousands, millions of numbers, complicated processes, and you find the child as if he is a computer. Sometimes he learns by heart so many big amounts of phrases. For example, learning Quran by heart. All the Quran or any book or the diary or any of the complicated books. But when you ask him, what's your name? He might repeat the same phrase and say, what's your name? So many children are like this. They learn Quran by heart. And they can, like computer, when you make a search for a verse of Quran, you say, for example, tell me all the verses that describe the word Allah. He's going to tell you in an organized way. Number one, in Al-Baqarah, for example, surah, in the verse so and so, in Ali Imran, and so on. This is something that's very interesting, and it's very strange at the same time, but it might be used in a good way, and it's helpful. One of the strange things also, by the way, is that there's a famous film about autism, a very old one called The Rain Man. This was for the actor called Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise. They were playing the role of, Dustin Hoffman was the autistic brother. And the name of the film was called The Rain Man. I was making a lecture in one of the open areas for parents, and one of them asked me a question about the name of the film. Does this mean that autistic children forecast or expect what's going to happen before it happens? Because the film says that the rain man, the man was expecting rain to fall. Okay? So no, it's not this way. It's not something that's spiritual. No, it's not transparency, as they say. It's not spiritual one. No, it's, scientifically speaking, hypersensitivity in the central nervous system. You know, when there is, for example, an earthquake or a flood that's going to happen, you find animals, and some other creatures, for example, insects or so, are in a confused way. They are moving around and around, so you conclude that there is something is going to happen. There is an earthquake or there is something. You find these animals or these creatures frustrated. They are stimulated in a way or another. So you expect that there is going to be a natural disaster, for example. This applies also, the same thing applies to autistic persons. They feel before things happen. I've so many times heard so many parents telling me that when his child is watching the TV or not watching the TV, he's in another room, and his preferred program or his preferred advertisement comes in the TV, he comes to the TV before the advertisement or before the news or the piece of music comes. He knows. This is not forecasting. This is hypersensitivity. And this hypersensitivity might be painful sometimes. This is what Dr. Temple Grandin, as I've said, the famous professor of veterinary medicine, have said. Because sometimes she had, as I've said, what's called hyperacusis. Hyperacusis is to hear much sensitively than others, out of the range of normality. She said that the bells of the church, tan, 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 these rings or these bell sounds were irritating her so much. She was frustrated. So her mother went to the church and told them, please, put a piece of cloth in the bells in order to cut short this loud voice because it irritates my daughter. So when they put it, she says, I lost my attention and I became relieved. Anyway, the issue of autism is very complicated, but as I've said in this episode, there are so many good news, and the prognosis or the future or the destiny of an autistic child or an autistic person is not that bad as we, for example, 10 years, we've been thinking. Nowadays, it looks like as if someone is having, not cold, but like, for example, rheumatic fever. It's treatable. We have so many ways to treat it, and every child has his own way of treating this problem, but his parents have to be loving each other, cooperating, and putting their aim and their goal in front of them. We want to make this child as good as Temple Grandin, the professor of veterinary medicine. So I think time is ended now, and I wish to see you in the next episode from Family Issues. So let's hope that we are going to have so many topics, and I'm waiting for all your emails to be received about any issue you want from Family Issues. So thank you very much, and see you next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You are never alone. You are never alone. Through sorrow and through grief, through happiness and peace, you are never alone. So now, as you long for your past, prepare for your future, but knowing nothing's gonna last. You see, this life is but a road, a straight and narrow path to our final abode. So travel well, O Muslim, and paradise will be your home. And always remember that you are never alone.